All right, we want to welcome everyone to the Haskell TRiO Self-Care Seminar Zoom. Our guests today are Meg Fowler and Presley Hasselman. Meg received her Bachelor of Science in Social Welfare and her Master's in Social Welfare from the University of Kansas. She has experience working with immigrant and refugee resettlement. She's also worked as a counselor with the National Suicide Prevention Hotline, and she's currently working in crisis services and suicide prevention and intervention. Meg also has a passion for promoting wellness in minority communities. Presley is a citizen of the Shawnee Tribe of Oklahoma. She earned a BA in psychology and also a BA in women, gender, and sexuality studies. In 2019, she graduated from Wellspring School of Allied Health. She is a massage therapist currently, and she's also an adjunct instructor with the Wellspring School. She specializes in deep tissue sports massage and restorative relaxation. Presley and Meg, welcome. Take it away.
Thank you. Thanks, Lori. So you all might be wondering why and how we're sitting in the same space right now. So just to be totally transparent, Presley and I are partners. We got engaged over the summer, and we both have a deep passion for wellness and self-care, and we think of self-care pretty broadly. And so we're going to talk about what that means from both of our perspectives, since we do have different specialties and expertise. I am affiliated with an organization in town, but I am not here representing my agency tonight. I am just here as kind of a volunteer and sharing some of my knowledge that I have. So if you have questions about where I work, I'm happy to answer that. But for the most part, we're just going to operate from like a personal lens. Do you have anything you'd like to say before we get started?
No,
okay.
I think that's good.
I tend to be an over talker, so Presley might have to nudge me to be like, hey, shut up.
It's okay. Happy wife, happy life. So
we do have a presentation. There aren't very many of you, so really want to hear from you all. Do you want us to share our presentation with you, or just like make this more of a casual conversation? Feel free to unmute yourselves and talk if you have a preference. If you don't have a preference, we'll go ahead and use the PowerPoint.
I think to make you a host.
Oh, well, it's
so
okay.
One moment.
But it's letting me.
Oh, okay, cool. Yes, great. Awesome.
Can you all see the presentation? Okay.
Yep.
Lori, if anybody chats anything in, will you let us know? Because we can't see the chat box.
Yes.
But please know that we are super casual, and we want you to unmute yourselves and engage however much you would like, or what you're comfortable with. All right. So I'm wondering, or we're wondering from all of you, when you hear the words self-care, what's the first thing that comes to mind? So you can chat or unmute yourself and let us know what comes to mind.
I think anything that helps you to be mindful, I guess, in the moment would be something I think about as self-care.
Oh, absolutely.
Someone in the chat has put catnap.
Yes, love a cat nap.
Just took one
Presley
earlier.
just woke up from one.
Someone has also put jujitsu.
Jiu-jitsu.
Oh,
Cool. That's
wow.
awesome.
Yeah, so these are great examples of self-care activities that you can do. It's really important to take into consideration that self-care will look different for everyone. You know, what works for me really might not work for you. In fact, most of my self-care does not work for Presley, and a lot of her self-care does not work for me. And so it's important to know what it is that works for you and to lean into that rather than trying to force what somebody else considers to be self-care.
Right.
I think it's also important when we're talking about self-care to acknowledge the privilege that we hold in the world. I know that as a white woman, a white straight passing woman, it may be easier for me to access some of these things in the self-care world than it is for other minority folks. For example, access to adequate medical care and things like that, because I do consider like going to the doctor or getting therapy to be part of my self-care. So something to consider there. And when we talk about self-care, we're really talking about like a whole kind of picture of wellness. So I think sometimes when we think of self-care, we think of doing face masks in the bath and drinking tea, right? And while that can be a self-care activity, it just falls under the umbrella of self-care rather than looking at the whole picture. So I'm going to talk about self-care from the mental health perspective, and Presley's going to talk about self-care from the like physical kind of relaxation and grounding world. And we may interact with one another in some of the things that we talk about. So when we're talking about self-care in relation to mental health, I think it's really important to remember some of these things. So it's important to prioritize your mental health for so many reasons. I would say that one of the main reasons is because it helps prevent like mental health crises or suicide crises in the long run. So if you are in tune with your mental health and you understand your needs and you're willing to communicate those and share those, that can be a really big preventative measure when we're talking about suicide prevention and mental health crises in general. And we know that mental health also impacts our physical, spiritual, emotional, and social experiences. So if we're not feeling totally mentally sound, we may not operate in the world in the way that we want to, right? We may have things that are holding us back or making us hesitant or causing fear. And all of this really impacts the way that you navigate the world. When your mental health is sound, you tend to be in a place where you can have good decision-making behavior. And so what I mean by that is when your mental health is off kilter and maybe you don't have the access to what you need in that moment, you might become more impulsive. You may partake in things like substance use or alcohol use sorry, I'm distracted by the kitty. That is different than you would normally interact with substances, right? Or it may make you more likely to blow up during a fight with your partner or your family. Whereas if you're in a good place mentally, you can work to ground yourself or, use the skills that you have to navigate that situation. In general, when your mental health is sound, you're able to cope more adequately in the face of adversity. So I don't know if you've all heard of the ACEs score, but it's like childhood adversity and how that impacts you as an adult. And so when you're in the face of adversity, if you don't have the skills and the support in place to navigate that situation, you may have a harder time. But we also know that humans are inherently resilient. And I know that to be true about the Native community firsthand, because I see that with Presley and Lori in the folks that they surround themselves with as well. And then also your productivity in daily activities like school, work, caregiving, all of those things will be more in place when your mental health is sound. And this is not to say that, it's bad to have mental illness or that it's impossible to do all of these things with mental illness. What I'm talking about here is your willingness to open up about your mental health and to share with others. So when I do presentations for my job, I talk a lot about my own experience with mental health. And the reason that I do that is to show that that's a really normal experience, right? I'm a professional working in the world every day, but I also have a severe anxiety disorder, right? And I struggle with depression. And for some folks, it can be really validating to hear those things coming from someone who's teaching them. And I know Presley has been really working on being more open about her mental health as well, because we know that's a huge preventative measure. A lot of times we hear that people don't want to share that they're going through something because they don't want to burden their loved ones, when really their loved ones don't feel that they're a burden to them. I could go on and on, so I'm going to stop talking before I take up way too much time. Okay, this is a new thing I'm trying out for my presentation. So if you take a minute or two to text Meg Fowler 603 to the number 22333, I want you to text in a couple of words that really capture what you like to do for self-care. I'm going to do it too. We'll see if it works. If it doesn't, I do have a backup plan.
22333.
Cool, I think it's going to work. Is it working for you? Mm-hmm. Okay. Yay, this is very exciting for me. I was in a presentation last week with, I think there were like 25 people in there, and it was like crickets, and I thought people were just not participating, but it turned out there was a technical difficulty. So I'm glad it's working.
I'm sorry, what was the assignment? What were we supposed to do?
Just text in some words of activities that you like to do to take care of yourself.
Oh, okay.
So I'm seeing a lot of really good activities for self-care: music, sleeping, exercise, meditation, spending time with friends, coloring, that was mine, praying. These are all really important things. And we can think also about self-care activities as being things that we call protective factors. And when we look at protective factors, we are looking at things that sustain life for folks, things that make them feel connected to other people, so or to something bigger than themselves. So I know, here's kind of a silly example, but two of my really good friends love to color, and they got me on this coloring train, and we can't stop, and we have a text message group about it. And really, it's not about the coloring, right? It's about the connection that we have. We send pictures and we text about it. And it's just something silly for us to focus on right now because the world is intense right now. And so anything like that, that just makes you feel connected, we would consider self-care or protective factors. And we know, culturally speaking, that when folks feel really connected to their culture, their risk for suicide, their risk for mental health distress really decreases, because that connection piece is huge in the mental health world.
Also, whoever put crying can relate.
That was me. Makes sense. Okay, that was the backup. So something that I find to be really important is creating safety plans. So oftentimes you hear about safety plans as being something that you create when you're in a crisis, or when somebody else is in a crisis. And that is true. It's really effective to have a written safety plan to reference when you are in distress. I really believe that we don't have the opportunity nearly enough to create a safety plan prior to a crisis. So in a lot of the trainings I do, I encourage us to stop the presentation and make a safety plan right now. So if you all take a second to grab a pen and paper or a marker, you can do this however you want. It can be on the computer, whatever, on your phone. I think it'd be good if we walked through a safety plan together. So you can name it whatever you want, safety plan, my safety plan, whatever. I mean, I'm not being very creative here, but so the first thing on this list is your warning signs. So you know yourself better than anybody else. Your safety plan should come from your own brain. So when I think of warning signs, I think of things that indicate that I'm in distress. So that could be, for me, help me out here. What are some of my warning signs?
Well, I know, like for myself, like whenever I'm like kind of slipping into depression, I stop exercising, which I generally tend to do like almost on a daily basis. So if I am not exercising regularly, I know that, you know, maybe something's going on with my mental health. My hygiene tends to falter slightly, you know, and those are just a couple of things that I recognize for myself that may be warning signs. And I think it's similar with Meg too. She's very active. So when she's not being active, that could be a sign for me to check in with her.
Yeah, the cool thing is too that if you talk openly about your mental wellness, folks can really help you identify when you're maybe about to kind of slip into something. And warning signs can look like changes in behavior, kind of thinking about the world in a hopeless lens, those kinds of things. The next thing is internal coping strategies. So these are going to be things that you can access just on your own. So if you've been in therapy before and you have certain exercises that you know are really helpful, or breathing exercises or positive affirmations, whatever that looks like. I know for Presley, she'll, you know, go upstairs and take a minute to herself. So anything that works for you. And we'll talk a little bit more about what some coping strategies look like when we get to the like more physical element. And then social supports and social settings are going to be places you can go or people you can call for distraction. So these aren't necessarily places or people that are going to help you in the crisis, but they're going to be people who can provide a distraction. So playing video games online with friends, that could be one. It's a little different right now because of COVID. I would normally want to go to a coffee shop or something. Not doable right now, but FaceTiming my friend and having coffee over FaceTime can work. And then we go to family and friends who can help in a crisis. So these are going to be folks that you feel really safe with, that you feel comfortable with, that you can confide in. I know that we all have friends that we tend to gravitate towards for that kind of support. And that probably looks like them just being willing to listen to you or help you get connected to therapy or whatever that looks like. And then the next step is going to be professionals and agencies. And I have a slide at the very end for resources, so you're welcome to steal some of those. But on this section, you can put your therapist, your social worker, you could put the TRiO folks.
Your massage therapist.
Your local crisis center, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. I'm very passionate about the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, so you'll hear me plug it a lot. You don't actually have to be suicidal to call that number. You can call that number just if you've had a bad day and you need to talk to someone. You can call if you're worried about someone else, and it's a free and confidential resource, so it really is very useful. Anyway, and then making the environment safe. So what does a safe environment look like to you? Where can you go or who can you be with that makes you feel safer, right? And so who is that person or what does that environment look like for you? So have you all had an opportunity to write these things down? Are you still working on it? Give me a thumbs up if you are done.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
So on the suicide hotline, you said that people can just call like to chat. Like, is there a time limit? Like, do they let just people kind of go on and on? Because I know sometimes when people kind of get in their feelings and need someone to talk to, that can get kind of lengthy, and that might make
circular,
apprehensive about, calling.
Yeah, there's no time limit. The only thing is that so many of y'all are probably not from Kansas, am I right? Yeah. Okay, so if you have a Kansas area code, you'll be routed to the center that I answer for. And we do not put up a time limit. The only stipulation is that if we have a bunch of calls coming in, we may say, hey, can I give you a call back when the line slows down, or, you know, things like that, just so that we can give everyone the opportunity. But no, we will never like turn someone away or anything, or give a time limit. Just that one time if we need to say like, hey, we'll give you a call back or whatever. I've talked for a very long time to people.
And that would be like if people aren't in crisis at the moment. Like,
right. Yes. If someone's in a crisis, we're not going to say like, hey, we'll call you back. We will let that ring over to the next center. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Okie dokie. So now
we're going to talk about some relaxations, some techniques that you can use for relaxation. So this is going to be, you know, I mean, Meg has quite a large repertoire of what she can do for, you know, relaxation techniques, but mine, you know, focus more on like the body and the mind. So one thing that we talk about a lot in massage therapy, and what I, you know, talk about with my students is grounding. And I feel like this, like grounding and self-care have been terms that have kind of like become more mainstream over the last couple of years. Like, I think that self-care is like a very hot topic right now. But grounding is going to help, you know, calm your anxiety or distress. So, you know, sometimes like we can feel really overwhelmed or anxious or just a flood of emotions. And basically what grounding is going to do is it's going to help us come back to center. So it's going to help bring our bodies and our minds back together. And this is going to help us reconnect with the present moment. So, you know, if you're having like PTSD, or if you're having flashbacks, panic attacks, anything like that, grounding can help us kind of come back to ourselves. And that's going to also create the separation from distress of the emotional state or situation.
So to give an example of this, Presley knows this about me. If we're at the grocery store and it's super busy and I'm wearing my mask, I mean, I always wear my mask, but now that masks are a thing, I get really overwhelmed. It feels like all of my senses are stimulated and I like almost can't handle it. Mm-hmm. And so she'll like be able to see from my eyes that I am like not in my body anymore. And so once we get in the car, I have to like breathe and try to like ground myself again. So grounding isn't just for like big, huge things. It can also be for disassociating in the grocery store.
Well, and it can like, you know, like before a big test or anything, if you're feeling like nervous about a test or anything like that, you can take a few moments to ground yourself before that. I always go into work a few minutes early so that I have some time to like really like spend some time with myself before I'm like giving all of this energy and physical, you know, physical ability to other people. So I definitely want to like ground myself and come into myself so that I'm like in a solid place before I'm just, you know, throwing a bunch of energy around. So
okay, we're going off script here. Do you remember when we were listening to the All My Relations podcast about mm-hmm. Thanksgiving, and they were talking about thankfulness and how gratitude, is it okay that I speak to this?
Yeah.
Okay. They were talking about how gratitude has become this like big popular thing, and they make like gratitude journals now and gratitude blogs and all of these different things related to gratitude. And in this podcast we were listening to, it's an Indigenous podcast, and the gals were talking about how gratitude has really been rooted in Indigenous history, and it's really part of the culture to just practice gratitude and gratefulness.
And like giving back.
And giving back in a way. And I know that there's been a lot of research to show that gratitude and gratefulness does wonders for your emotional well-being as well. So it can be a grounding exercise also. In fact, it's almost impossible to feel gratitude and anxiety at the same time. It's not impossible, but Something that you can do too to work on grounding is take a few moments in a space of gratitude and think about the things that you're grateful for that day. Or if you can't think of anything that you're grateful for that day because you're just feeling like crap, you can think about what you've been grateful for in the past, right? And that can kind of help to center you or ground you as well.
Yeah. And like self-care, grounding is going to look different for everyone. I think this kind of goes into the next slide. Yeah. So, it could be like breathing exercises. It could be stretching. For me, I am definitely big on like exercising. I try to work out at least like 2 to 3 times a week and just be active in some sort of way. I mean, I'm active with my job, but outside of like being stuck in a room, being active, I try to do something active, and that's how I know like I can feel like myself again after I've done my exercises. You can do mindfulness techniques, which Meg would have a better explanation of what mindfulness techniques could be. Getting out in nature is really good, and kind of incorporating all of your senses, in which you have an example for that.
I do. So mindfulness can look like, have y'all heard of guided imagery before? So guided imagery, you can find some really wonderful guided imagery videos on YouTube. And I would be happy to look for a good one and send it to Lori and she could forward it to y'all. But basically what it does is there's like a really soothing voice that walks you through like some sort of image. So like you're on the beach or you're in the mountains, and it tells you how your body feels, and it can really transport you. I've done it before when I've been really anxious, and it's super helpful. I have an exercise, just a pretty quick, simple one for the senses. Are you all interested in me walking you through that, or would you prefer to skip it?
I'm down.
Okay, so why don't you all turn off your cameras? I want you to turn them back on after, but turn off your camera because it can feel really vulnerable to do something like this. I'll turn mine off as well. Okay. So if you're feeling really anxious, something that you can do is think about your senses and how they connect you to the world around you. So I want you to take a few seconds to acknowledge 5 things that you see around you right now. Okay, and I want you to acknowledge 4 things that you can touch around you, and go ahead and touch those things. Now take a few seconds to acknowledge 3 things that you hear. Acknowledge 2 things that you can smell. And acknowledge 1 thing that you can taste. All right. Camera's back on.
So is that the dog snoring?
Yes.
Yes, sorry.
Christian, it's Flossie. Flossie is snoring.
Yeah, we have a pug and she's a loud snorer. So that's a really simple exercise that you can do. Even if you're just feeling a twinge of anxiety, or before going into a test, I know y'all are about to enter into finals. So that can be something you do during a final if you get overwhelmed or have test anxiety. I'm wondering from you all, what did it feel like for you to acknowledge those things? Did it feel helpful, or did it feel kind of like, I wasn't in distress, so I didn't notice anything?
Well, I could definitely see how that would work in an anxiety situation.
Yeah.
That was very distracting.
I have both in an anxiety attack and a panic attack tried that, but it doesn't really help in my situation, because when I did that, I instead was like, oh my gosh, all my senses are working right now, and then it overloaded my senses even more, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh shoot.
Yeah,
Maybe
absolutely.
myself.
Yeah, that does not work for everyone, right? And this is a great example of how these things are not universal, right? They really are based on the person and the environment. Okay. Another thing you can do with the senses is just focus on one sense. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, you can put a cube of ice on the back of your neck to cool you down, or smell some sage and cedar, or smell some essential oils. Are we doing okay on time, Lori? Okay.
Okay. So I can probably guess that each of us could pinpoint some place on our body where we're feeling some sort of pain or tension or stress. I mean, especially everyone or all of you, because you're students, you sit at a desk, and for the TRiO folks, you are working at desks also. We're all working at computers right now just because of the way of the world. So I'm going to talk about some benefits of massage therapy, and then I will just kind of go through some quick little techniques that you can do for, breaks in between studying, or, just to work on yourself, kind of at home. So massage therapy is going to reduce emotional distress. So it definitely reduces symptoms of anxiety and depression. I know right now, since winter is kind of settling in, some people might feel the effects of seasonal depression. So massage therapy is a great, outlet to kind of help combat some of those feelings. It's going to naturally release endorphins, so all those real good feel good hormones definitely will boost some of those, and it'll help promote taking a break because we live in such a fast-paced society, and it's all about productivity. We tend to sit for hours at our computers, or sit for hours in the same position when our bodies are designed to move and almost constantly. So taking this time to either work on yourself at home, or actually going to a place and getting a professional massage can really help carve out some of that time for self-care, and just for working on yourself. Massage therapy is also going to improve some aspects of physical health. So with massage, it really gets kind of like the fluids moving. So when we have like these tight spots in our bodies, usually it's like a lack of oxygen-rich blood. So if we move that blood around, it's going to help kind of release these tight spots in our bodies. It's going to help reduce that stress hormone. So we're not going to constantly be feeling like we're wound up and wearing our shoulders as earrings, and our neck is constantly cricked because we're looking down at our technology. So, it's hard to align our physical and our mental health. Like if our physical health is, if we're constantly feeling like we're in pain, that could really help or really kind of aid in depressive or anxious symptoms.
Something that I thought about was that we know that stress or intense stress can lead to heart disease.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you get massage or do some of these other self-care activities to help reduce stress, it improves your physical health in general. But also massage improves circulation and things like that, which really helps to decrease things like heart disease.
Yes. And I know as students, you're probably staying up pretty late, and you might feel really tired right now just because of the workload, and it just kind of takes a different level of energy to constantly be on Zoom all day. So they do say that an hour of massage is equal to 6 hours of rest. So it really does help you feel more rested, and kind of like it can kind of reinvigorate you almost in a way, because you're getting a lot of those benefits. So
I think something else to consider is that I know massage therapy can seem unattainable for people, especially students. I know that when I was a student, I couldn't think about getting massages because I couldn't afford them. But Presley's going to walk us through some like self-massage stuff that you can do just at home to improve your like physical, the way that you feel physically, but also kind of help just give yourself some love, right?
Yeah. Okay, so I encourage you all to follow along with me if you'd like. If not, then you can always refer back, because I guess this is being recorded. So what I like to start out with whenever I encourage self massage, especially because like it's hard to massage all parts of our body. So I really like to focus on like the head, the neck, and the shoulders, because I think that like almost every single person could probably feel like they got something going on in the shoulders here. So what I like to do is just kind of start out like running my fingers through my scalp, and don't be afraid to kind of like dig in. Like you can really like latch onto your scalp, and you can kind of look for tense spots. And if you do find tense spots, don't be afraid to kind of press in on them, because that will help desensitize them and can help release some of that tension, especially like here in the head, neck, and shoulders. This is where a lot of headaches can stem from. So if you're having a headache, you can definitely work these areas. Then I like to move down to my temples, give those some good love. And if you kind of press in, you could probably feel tension, and it feels kind of like a guitar string or something that you're strumming. And a lot of tension can reside here from stress. I know that when I get stressed, I tend to clench my jaw. So once I move from the temples, I'll move down to my jaw here and do some circular friction.
Question.
Go ahead.
Can you press pretty hard on your temple?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, people might think that you could like poke through your brain, but like, no, that's not going to happen.
Okay.
And here in the jaw, you can kind of feel the like bulk of this muscle right here. And there could be like tender spots or even trigger points. And trigger points are little spots that will send pain to other areas of our body. So just working into this, especially if you're like if you grind your teeth or if you have TMJ, working in this area can help relieve a lot of tension. Then once we've moved from there, I like to work starting at the back of the neck. So if you feel at the base of your neck, kind of like those two little knobbies that like where the neck meets the base of the skull, you can kind of press your fingers in there, and you can do all these different range of motion things. You can tilt your head back, you can tilt your head forward, you can tilt your head side to side. And you can do these motions all the way down your neck. So you can feel for your spine, and then you'll just want to go slightly outward from your spine, and you can feel these like thick bunches of muscle. And you can do these kind of like range of motion things all the way down your neck. And I'm sure you'll probably feel some real tender spots, maybe some knots. And when you feel the knots and tender spots, you can kind of dig in a little deeper if your body can handle it. So you can spend some good time doing that. And then here at the shoulders, we're going to kind of do this like kind of pinching motion, kind of like a claw. But if you grab onto your traps, which is like that big muscle right here, nice and thick muscle, you can just squeeze that and pinch it. You can kind of sift that muscle through your arms or through your hands. And you'll just want to, kind of like do this squeezing motion a few times. And you can do this for as long as you can, as long as your hands will allow you. You could have your partner do this for you. You could have a family member do it for you. But just relieving some of these areas can really help relieve some of the pains and tensions that go along with being a student or being sedentary or sitting at your desk all the time. And obviously, I encourage you all, if you can, to get a professional massage, because let's be real, it just feels so much better when somebody else does it for you. And I'll leave my contact information in the chat also. So if any of you all are interested in getting a massage, I'm more than happy to do that for you all. So.
Some other things that you can consider too are like taking a tennis ball and putting it on the ground and like rubbing your feet that way.
Yep.
There's a lot of tension in your feet too.
Yes, absolutely. And you can also take, like a frozen water bottle, and you can like kind of like rub your neck and shoulders with that also. There's a bunch of different techniques, but those, you know, working in these areas in particular can be really beneficial, especially since we're like constantly looking down at our technology. We're, you know, sitting at a desk, we're rolled forward, so our shoulders are really tight. So working those areas would be good for, you know, just a simple little at-home routine that, you know, you do like 50 minutes of work and then you spend 10 minutes, you know, massaging your scalp or massaging your shoulders or something like that.
Also grounding.
Yes, very grounding.
So these are just some resources we put together for you all. Feel free to take a picture of this slide. What I will point out are the safety planning apps that you can download on your phone, because we always have our phones with us. So it's a good way to stay connected to those safety plans. And then I've already plugged the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, but the Kansas Suicide Prevention HQ answers the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline for Kansas. And they also just have a direct number. If you maybe aren't from Lawrence, but you live in Lawrence, it's a great way just to get connected to a local resource. Then the Strong Hearts Native Helpline is for Indigenous folks who have experienced abuse, domestic or sexual abuse. They provide confidential and free support. And then the American Massage Therapy Association, their website, has some different resources that might be helpful to you all.
A lot of different research regarding the efficacy of massage therapy and the benefits. You could also find local massage therapists in your area that are affiliated with the AMTA. And they probably have some videos and things like that also on their website.
Do any of you have questions, comments, feedback, anything that you'd like to talk about? We talked longer than we meant to, Lori.
That's okay. That's fine. I thought it was really good information. There was a lot of new information that I don't think that any of us in TRiO, at least, have talked about or heard about before, especially the safety plan. I think the safety plan was a really, really good idea. I think just writing those things down was really helpful, especially the warning signs.
Mm-hmm.
When you can just identify what things might be triggering for you.
Yep,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely.
Because there's a lot. I mean, there's so much going on right now with the pandemic and isolation, and so I think that was really, really helpful.
Good.
Yeah, so thank you very much, virtual clap, for the presentation. That was really, really good. If nobody else has any questions or anything, I will say thank you to Meg and Presley, and then just go over a few housekeeping things for the folks that did join and also for recording purposes. If you didn't catch it, the Haskell Writing Center is now available to everyone for if you need your final papers reviewed. You can find that information on Blackboard. We have a grade check that's due on Friday. I am so sorry that we have not got to the drawing for the last grade check. We have been working on a report at TRiO that's very, very important. So we had a very hard deadline that we had to meet, but hopefully we will be able to draw for that tomorrow. And then if you can get your grade checks in by Friday, that would be great. You can still turn in a degree checklist. I know I've had some students, I'm sure Ron has had some students turn some in, but there's still time to get those in. And then the final schedule will be posted after this Zoom. I know that Ron has sent it out in the weekly TRiO message. I forgot and left it off, but I did post it to my Facebook, and I'll post it to the TRiO Facebook as well. So any announcements or anything, Ron, Yosh?
Thank you guys for coming in and talking with us. That was a lot of great information, and that was really cool. I like the safety plan too. That was awesome. So thank you.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Reach out
I think,
anytime. Oh, I'm sorry, Ron. Go ahead.
oh, I was just going to say, I think during this pandemic time, we've been so removed from our normal patterns
Mm-hmm.
that doing things like this has been helpful. I know I've been doing some on my own already.
Awesome.
So, just going out on the deck and taking deep breaths and
Mm-hmm.
and getting fresh air and just little things like that throughout the day has
Yeah.
been helpful for me. So I
Good.
appreciate the kind
Yeah.
of an affirmation of what you were saying about all that.
Awesome. Well, we're going to log off, but just know that we're happy to show up in the future for anything that you all need. So
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
take care, everyone.
Bye.